What do you mean no one showed up for the breakfast shift again? Mason Jett's voice echoed through the hallway of his downtown office. He stood stiff behind his desk, holding a printed customer complaint email in one hand and rubbing his temple with the other. This was the third complaint in a week about the same location, Store 7, a diner-style restaurant in the 11-location chain he inherited from his father 4 years ago. His assistant, Carla, shifted uncomfortably. That's what the district manager told me. Said it's a staffing issue. They're having trouble keeping people. Mason frowned. That store's payroll is fine. I've approved every hire they've asked for. Something's off. You want me to schedule an official visit? No, Mason said, tossing the paper down. They'll just clean everything up and act perfect for a day. I'm going in myself. Carla blinked. You mean officially? He shook his head. Undercover. Like a customer. They don't know me. I've never met the waitstaff or kitchen crew. It's in a different city than headquarters for a reason. Mason grabbed his coat. He'd cut his hair shorter, shaved the beard, and changed his glasses.
No shoot.
He looked like any tired guy in his mid-30s heading out to grab a bite. The perfect disguise. He drove 2 hours north to the location without telling anyone. It was a small-town spot, nestled between a pawn shop and a laundromat, with faded signage that hadn't been updated in years. The parking lot was less than half full, even at noon on a Saturday. He walked in and sat himself at the corner booth. It was a good 15 minutes before anyone came over. Sorry, the waitress said, out of breath. We're short today. Again. Mason glanced up. The name tag read Nora Gentry. She looked about 22, hair tied back with a pencil sticking out of her bun. Her apron was stained, and her eyes had the kind of hollow tiredness that didn't come from just one bad shift. Take your time, Mason said calmly. You're doing this alone? Just me and one line cook today. Manager's working from home. Again, she said with air quotes. Says there's nothing he can do if people don't show. Mason stayed quiet, letting her continue. She poured him coffee and sighed. Honestly, the boss doesn't care about us. We're on our own here. Mason's hand froze around the coffee mug. What makes you think that? She looked up, genuinely surprised by the question. Because nobody ever checks in. We've had broken booths for months. The AC's busted in the kitchen. I've worked 12 days straight. Every time someone quits, they tell me to cover. I'm one waitress. But apparently, I'm also the host, busser, and sometimes dishwasher. Mason didn't know what to say. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He'd built this company further than his father had, expanded to 11 stores, focused on numbers. But this wasn't just bad management. This was neglect. His neglect. Nora handed him a worn menu. Sorry to unload. You're just here for pancakes, probably. He smiled politely. Yeah, and maybe some truth. She gave him a tired chuckle and walked off. While waiting, Mason watched. The single cook in the back was clearly overwhelmed, food orders piling up, dishes stacked high. Nora dashed between tables, apologizing to everyone, keeping things moving with sheer will. A couple at another table grew impatient and walked out. Nora bit her lip but didn't chase after them. She just turned and cleared the table. Mason ate his pancakes quietly. They were decent, but the syrup bottle was sticky and the plate chipped. As he paid at the front, Nora rang him up with a forced smile. Thanks for your patience. You always this steady under pressure? She gave a small shrug. If I'm not, who else will be? He left a $100 tip and walked out without another word. Back in his car, he didn't start the engine right away. He stared at the wheel, jaw tight, heart uneasy. Nora's words echoed in his head. The boss doesn't care about us. He cared. He always had. But somewhere between spreadsheets and expansion plans, he'd stopped showing it. He started the car. He wasn't done with Store 7. Not even close. Next time, he wouldn't be a customer. He was going in as a trainee. The following Monday, just after dawn, Mason stood behind the diner in a plain navy hoodie and worn jeans, holding a small duffel bag with a spare shirt and his phone turned off. He'd used an alias, Jay, to get hired through a temp agency the store manager used to plug last-minute holes. The application process had been laughably lax. No interview, no background check, just a text, "Be here at 6 a.m. Black shoes. He stepped around a leaking dumpster and knocked on the back door. After a long pause, it creaked open. A short man with thinning hair and a wrinkled polo gave him a once-over. "You the temp?"
"Yeah, I'm Jay."
The man grunted and pushed the door open wider. "Follow me. You're on dish. Don't screw around. I've got 2 people out again." Mason followed him through the cramped, dim kitchen. The air smelled like burnt oil and sour mop water. The floor was already sticky. "I'm Rick," the man said over his shoulder. "Kitchen manager." "Well, acting manager. Whatever. Doesn't matter." Mason nodded. Rick pointed at the industrial sink. "That's you. Spray, scrub, rack, repeat. If it's not clean enough, it goes back. You don't leave your station unless I say." "Got it." "Understood." Rick walked off without another word. The morning rush hit fast. Plates, pans, cups, and utensils piled up within minutes. Mason rolled up his sleeves and got to work. The dishwasher was temperamental. Sometimes it ran, sometimes it didn't. The hot water was inconsistent, and the sanitizer smelled off. At 7:30, a younger guy with tattoos along his forearm pushed through the back door carrying a crate of eggs. "Yo, new guy?" he asked.
"Yeah,
"Jay. Tyrell. Line cook. Sorry in advance if I yell. This place is chaos." "No worries." Tyrell dropped the crate near the fridge and opened it. Half the eggs were cracked and leaking. He sighed and muttered, "Figures." A few minutes later, Nora rushed in, hair damp from the rain. She froze when she saw Mason. "You're the pancake guy." Mason met her eyes. "Now I'm the dish guy." She stared for a beat, then laughed a dry, surprised laugh. "You're undercover?" Mason nodded slightly. "Keep it between us. I don't even care why. Just." "Good. Maybe now someone will see." She grabbed an apron and headed out front without another word. By mid-morning, Mason's shoulders ached. The sink had backed up twice. Rick barked at him to deal with it and disappeared into the office. Tyrell was muttering to himself about bad orders and missing prep. A teenager named Danny showed up an hour late and got chewed out by Rick in front of everyone. "You think I'm running a damn daycare?" Rick shouted. "We open at 6. You show up at 9 like you're a guest." "I had to take my brother to school," Danny said, voice low. "Not my problem. You want hours, you show up. Otherwise, don't come back." Tyrell threw a rag across the prep table. "Man, lay off. She's the only one who even showed." Rick glared at him. "You want to be next?" Mason kept scrubbing, jaw tight. The way Rick talked to Danny made his blood rise. She couldn't have been more than 17. At noon, the crowd thinned. Mason stepped outside for a quick breath of air. Nora joined him, sipping from a chipped mug. "You okay?" she asked. "I've had worse days. But this place, it's rough." She looked at the sky. "We had a guy quit mid-shift last week. Just walked out. Rick told me to cover the grill and the floor." "You do it."
"Yeah."
"What else was I gonna do? Let people wait 2 hours for eggs?" Mason leaned against the wall. "What's Rick's deal?"
She scoffed.
"He's been here forever. Thinks the place would fall apart without him. Yells more than he works. The only reason he's still here is 'cause the higher-ups don't see what happens day to day." "They ever come down? Corporate?" She laughed again. "Last time someone from up top visited was, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago? Even then, it was just for an hour. They had lunch, shook hands, left." Mason frowned. "What about the general manager?" Works remote. Sends texts. Sometimes calls. Mostly just wants numbers. They stood in silence for a moment. Nora looked at him.
Why now?
Why come here like this? Because I stopped knowing what was real, Mason said. She nodded slowly.
Well,
now you know. They went back inside. Around 2, things took a turn. A customer at table 4 started arguing with Danny. Mason heard it from the back. You people can't even get an order right. How hard is toast and eggs? Danny tried to stay calm. Sir, I gave you exactly what's on the ticket. Don't talk back. Just fix it. Useless girl. Mason dropped the tray he was drying and walked toward the dining area. He rounded the corner just as the man stood up. Rick was watching from the front counter, arms crossed, saying nothing. The man leaned forward, voice rising. I don't know why they let kids like you work here. Probably just filling quotas. Mason stepped between them. That's enough. The man looked him up and down.
Who are you?
Another busboy. I'm someone who doesn't tolerate abuse. You can sit down and speak like a human being, or you can leave. Rick finally moved. Don't speak to customers like that, Jay. Let Danny handle it. Mason turned to him. She was handling it. You let him insult her. Rick's face flushed. Watch your mouth. You're a temp. One more word, and you're out. Mason looked over at Danny, who was frozen, blinking fast. He turned back to Rick. I'm not a temp, Mason said. Rick frowned. What?
I'm on Jett.
The words hit like a thunderclap. Nora dropped her tray. Tyrell peeked from the kitchen. Danny's eyes widened. Rick opened his mouth, but nothing came out. You let a customer racially insult a minor in full view of your staff and said nothing. Mason continued, voice low but steady. And you've been verbally harassing employees all day. You're done. Rick stammered. You can't just fire. I can. And I just did. Gather your things and leave. Rick looked around for support. Found none. He stormed into the office, slammed the door, and minutes later walked out with his keys. Mason turned to Danny. You okay? She nodded, eyes rimmed red. Thank you. He looked around the restaurant. Every employee had stopped moving. Nora stepped forward. You really are the boss. I am. And I've been gone too long. He exhaled. Things are changing. Starting now. The door shut behind Rick with a sharp, final click. The staff stood frozen, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Mason turned and walked back to the dish pit, pulling on his apron like nothing had happened. Tyrell stepped through the pass window, still holding a spatula. You're really Mason, Jett? Mason nodded once. Yes. Tyrell blinked. So that's why you didn't flinch when the sink backed up. Most temps flip out and walk. I needed to see what it's actually like here. Not just the numbers or reports real conditions. From the front, Nora called out, We've still got 4 tables waiting on food. Mason nodded. Then we keep going. For the next hour, they moved like a unit. Tyrell pushed through orders. Nora took charge of the floor, and Mason ran dishes without pause. Danny didn't say much, but she stayed close to Nora and checked every plate twice before it went out. By 3, the rush had died down. The lights buzzed faintly above as Mason leaned against the prep table, wiping sweat from his brow with a paper towel. Okay, he said, looking around. Break time. 1 person at a time.
Eat something.
Hydrate. Nora stepped forward. You sure? We're still short. You've all earned 10 minutes without someone breathing down your neck. Tyrell dropped onto an overturned milk crate in the back and started eating cold fries from a takeout box he'd stored on a shelf. Nora grabbed a protein bar from her bag and quietly handed half to Danny without a word. Mason went into the office. It was a mess, papers across the desk, a half-eaten sandwich molding in the trash, and an old calendar from last year still on the wall. He pulled the chair back, sat, and closed his eyes for a second. He opened the bottom drawer. Inside were time-off requests, most of them denied. A few had notes scribbled on them in red ink. Find coverage yourself or not my issue. One was Nora's, dated 3 months ago. Her request to take off 2 days for her sister's graduation had been marked, can't spare you. Mason folded it and slid it into his pocket. Back in the kitchen, Danny was wiping down the counters. Mason joined her. You didn't deserve what happened earlier. She didn't look up. It's not the first time. From customers? Sometimes. But mostly it's just people like Rick. They see someone younger, someone brown, and they decide we're easy to blame. Mason's jaw tightened. That ends now. I'm not letting that culture continue. She gave a short nod. Thanks. But it's not just him. It's the whole system here. No training. No support. People quit, and we just absorb it. Mason looked over at the dry erase schedule. The entire week was filled with crossed-out names and arrows pointing in different directions. Shifts covered by the same few names.
Nora.
Tyrell. Danny. Sometimes all 3 stacked in doubles. You've all been holding this place together, he said. Tyrell tossed his gloves into the trash.
Barely.
You wouldn't believe how many times we've had to close early because the fridge broke or deliveries didn't show. Does anyone report those issues? We try. But the GM just says make do. That's his go-to line. Make do. Nora returned from the front, arms crossed. Customers are gone. We've got a couple hours to reset before dinner. Mason looked at her. You ever trained on inventory? She gave a dry laugh. I've done it. No one showed me how, but I figured it out. Come with me. They walked into the storage room. The shelves were half-stocked, some items expired. A box of pancake mix had a hole chewed through the side, and a faint smell of mildew hung in the air. Who handles orders? Rick did. But he'd wait until we completely ran out, then panic call the vendors. Mason scanned the dusty clipboard of supplier contacts. We'll fix this. But I need help. I can't do it from the office. Nora looked at him, guarded. What kind of help? Temporary leadership. Just until I bring in a new manager. Someone who knows the floor. Who's earned trust. She hesitated. You offering that to me? I'm asking if you'll take it. She folded her arms, thinking. I don't have a degree. I've never managed a team. And I still have to bust my own tables half the time. You've been managing already. You just haven't had the title or the pay. She studied his face. I'll do it. But only if we're not just slapping paint on the walls. This place needs real change. You have my word. That night, after close, Mason stayed behind with Tyrell and Danny to deep clean the kitchen. They found a busted fan behind the grill that had been blowing hot air into the prep station for weeks. Tyrell looked at it and said, Well, that explains the swamp back here. Mason called in a maintenance crew to come first thing in the morning. By the time they left, it was past midnight. The parking lot was empty, the sign flickering overhead. Mason locked the door and turned to the others. I'll be back at 6. We've got a lot to do. Danny looked surprised. You're working another shift? Mason smiled faintly. I said I'd learn, didn't I? Tyrell gave a tired grin. Then we'll see you in the trenches. They split off into the night, and Mason walked alone to his car. He sat behind the wheel, staring at the diner's worn facade. He thought about his father, the man who'd built the original store with his bare hands, who used to say, no matter how big we get, we're nothing without our people. Somewhere along the way, Mason had started managing numbers instead of people. Now he was trying to reverse that. The next morning came fast. The crew was groggy but on time. Mason brought in breakfast sandwiches and coffee for everyone, setting them on the counter without a word. Tyrell raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. The new day manager arrived just after 7. Her name was Lydia, sent from a neighboring store to fill the gap. She was sharp, mid-40s, and already asking the right questions. Where's the incident log? Who handles vendor contracts? Why are these fryer temps off by 30 degrees? Mason watched quietly as Nora answered confidently, directing her to the back office. Lydia turned to Mason. Did you train her?
No.
She trained herself. That's the problem. Lydia gave a short nod. Noted. By lunch, the difference was already visible. The kitchen ran smoother. Orders flowed. No one yelled. Customers smiled. Nora printed a new checklist for pre-close duties and assigned them evenly. Mason called Carla from the alley behind the store. The line clicked. Hey, he said. Clear my schedule for the week. I'm staying here.
She didn't ask why.
She just said, understood. He hung up and went back inside. Later that afternoon, a vendor arrived with the week's produce. For the first time in months, it was correct. Mason signed the invoice and asked the driver, "Ever get complaints from this location before?" The driver laughed. Every week. Wrong orders, late payments, no one to sign. Guy before you? Nightmare. Thank you, Mason said, watching him pull away. By 5, the team gathered in the break room. Tyrell leaned against the fridge. Feels different in here. Mason nodded. It is. But this is only the beginning. Tomorrow, I'm bringing in an HR rep. We're reviewing every complaint from the last year. No more blind spots. Nora raised an eyebrow. You're going that far? I have to. You said something to me the first day I came in, that the boss doesn't care. Her expression shifted. You were right, he said. But I'm changing that. I'm starting here. No applause followed. No big cheers. Just a quiet, understanding silence. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The morning light filtered through the streaked front windows of Store 7, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum as Mason stepped inside. He had arrived early again, this time not to observe but to act. A quiet determination settled in his chest. He waited by the register as Nora unlocked the cash drawer, running the till with practiced precision. She glanced up, then back at the numbers. You're really staying the whole week? She asked, not looking away from the screen. I meant it, Mason replied. And longer if I have to. She closed the drawer and leaned on the counter. Then we need to talk about the freezer. It's frosting over again. And Tyrell can't prep onions if the slicer's still down. I brought someone to handle both, Mason said, nodding toward the door. Jorge, a contractor from facilities, pushed in a wheeled toolkit and gave a small wave. He'd worked with the company for over a decade but hadn't been dispatched to Store 7 in over a year. That was changing now. Nora raised an eyebrow. You're not wasting time. I already have, Mason said. The day unfolded with a steady rhythm. Customers trickled in, and the crew moved like they had been working together for months, not just a few days. There were still hiccups, missing lids, a blender that needed coaxing, but the team handled them without chaos. There was a new tone in the air. Not cheerful, not yet, but quieter, steadier. Mid-morning, Carla arrived from headquarters with 2 people from HR. Mason met them in the alley before they entered. Keep it low-key, he said. We're not here to scare people. Just listen. Carla nodded. We've pulled the last 18 months of internal notes. There's a pattern of complaints that never reached you. I figured, Mason said. Inside, the HR reps set up in the break room. One by one, employees stepped in privately. Mason didn't sit and he wanted them to speak freely, but he caught glimpses as people came and went. Tyrell rubbing the back of his neck as he walked out, Danny folding her arms tightly before stepping in, Nora emerging with a flushed face, holding a cup of water. Just after lunch, Mason joined Carla in the office. We've confirmed 3 separate incidents of verbal abuse from Rick, she said, her voice low. And 2 more from the former GM. None reported up the chain. Why not? No one believed anything would happen. And in some cases, The reports were removed entirely from the shared system. Mason sat back, his jaw locked. How many other stores are running like this? We don't know yet. Find out. He returned to the floor just as a woman in a corporate polo walked through the front door. She looked around, unimpressed, and then spotted Mason. I assume you're Jett, she said, walking over.
I'm Amanda.
District manager for this region. Mason offered a handshake. She ignored it. I heard you pulled Rick and suspended operations for review, she said. You didn't notify me. That's correct. You bypassed protocol. I am the protocol, Mason said. And I don't recall seeing you here once during the last 6 months. Amanda's expression tightened. I don't micromanage. That store's been stable for years. Stable doesn't mean functional. It means no one's told you the truth. Amanda glanced at Nora, who was refilling ice at the drink station. This store doesn't meet brand presentation standards, she said. The uniforms are inconsistent, the signage is faded, and your floor staff is undertrained. Nora overheard. She turned slowly, still holding the scoop. I train myself, she said, because no one else did. Amanda gave a tight smile. That's not how we do things. You're right, Mason interrupted. It's not. And that's why we're changing it. Starting with leadership. Amanda turned fully toward him. Excuse me? You're being relieved from oversight of this region. Effective immediately. Her face went pale. You're firing me? I'm removing you from a position you've neglected. What happens next is up to HR. She looked between him and Carla, who had quietly entered the room. You'll hear from my rep, Amanda said. Mason nodded once. Make sure they bring the records you've been sitting on. Amanda left without another word. The staff didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They just went back to work, more focused than before. That evening, Mason gathered the team in the dining area after close. The lights were dimmed, the place quiet except for the hum of the cooler in the kitchen. I owe you more than an apology, he began. I owe you action. And not just here. He looked around the room. Tyrell leaned against a table, arms crossed. Danny sat backward on a chair, chin on her hands. Nora stood beside the coffee station, watching him carefully. Effective this week, Mason continued. We're launching an audit across every store. Same process. Anonymous reporting. Open door policy. Real oversight. Tyrell raised an eyebrow. That just corporate talk, or you mean it? I'll be at every single one. In person. Nora stepped forward. And here. Lydia's staying on as general manager. Nora's taking on assistant manager duties, with full pay bump. You'll get training, formal support, and a say in hiring. Nora didn't speak at first. Then she asked, what about the rest of us? Every full-timer moves to 40 hours guaranteed. No more dangling shifts. Health benefits extended to part-timers after 6 months. And we're installing a new scheduling system that won't let anyone work more than 6 days straight. Danny sat up straighter. For real? For real, Mason said. You shouldn't have to beg for time off or choose between your job and your family. Tyrell looked over. What about equipment? We still got stuff running on duct tape. New slicer arrives tomorrow. New griddle next week. And Jorge's coming back to finish the freezer. Vendors are under review. Any late or spoiled deliveries will be replaced at company expense. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Danny asked, why now? Mason paused, then answered honestly, because someone told me the boss doesn't care. And they were right. I let numbers matter more than people. I trusted reports instead of showing up. That's done. Nora looked down, then back at him. I didn't say that to make you change. You didn't have to. You said it because it was true. No one applauded. But no one left either. The next morning, Lydia arrived early with a stack of training manuals and a fresh pot of coffee. She and Nora went over scheduling while Tyrell organized the prep station. Danny helped Jorge haul out the broken mixer. When Mason finally stepped outside, the sunrise was just touching the rooftops across the street. The air was cool, and for the first time in days, he felt the tightness in his chest ease. He didn't know if every store would be like this, if every team would fight to keep things together the way this one had, but he knew one thing: he wouldn't stay behind a desk again. As the first customer walked in, a man in a flannel jacket, nodding politely, Mason held the door open for him. "Welcome," he said. "We're glad you're here." And this time he meant it.